I gotta play that again. Welcome into Rob Wright's Gen X Pop Culture. And today we're discussing episode 5 of Band of Brothers. And with me, as always, is Heather. Heather, how are you?
Hey Rob, how's it going? I'm doing great.
Great. Glad to hear it. Well, we got an interesting episode today. I mean, I think episode 5 is a really solid episode. I think it really defines major winners in particular and his leadership. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite episodes, and finally we get a focus on winners, even though he's been, heavily one of the most shown characters, one of the most focused on characters. We've never had like one of the episodes really just be like about him. So I think it's great. I love it. And I love the way the episode is done, with him kind of from his point of view. He's writing the report, kind of when it starts with what happened in the action, and then it looks back as he's writing the report. So really, really well done episode.
Yeah, and you know who directed the episode?
Yeah, Tom Hanks.
Yeah,
He did a great
interesting.
job. He did a great job with it. I think well, there's a lot of things about the way this episode's done that I really like. So I think
Oh yeah, I think from a narrative standpoint, I think it was a brilliant idea to show him typing and do it in a flashback format. I think it was brilliant, and I like the way we're going to get into this a little bit. They show all the different actions and everything, and they set up stuff for the next episode where we really get into the nitty gritty with Bastogne.
yeah,
So.
yeah, very good stuff.
Well, today we got a lot to cover. So we're going to cover, a summary. We're going to cover the characters. We're going to go into each section of the episode. I think it breaks down pretty nicely. We talk about there's a little bit of the machine gun's nest is a bulk of it. There's a part where they go rescue the British paratroopers, and then there's the part where they've got a little bit of downtime in France, and then on to Bastogne, and you get to see elements of all these on here. Do you want to read the summary for the episode, Heather?
Yeah, I can read the official summary. I had
Mhm.
to, tweak a few words here and there. So
Oh yeah,
uh
please tweak. Yeah, I
yeah,
copy and pasted it, so it sometimes could be off a little bit.
yeah, some of it, I was kind of like, well, maybe I'll have to take some liberties with it. So, here we are. Captain Winters leads Easy Company in an attack on what they thought was a machine gun nest, but turns out to be two companies of German SS who also have artillery support. The attack is successful. Yes, they virtually wipe out the enemy. Um, it says they suffer many casualties. Easy doesn't. I mean, they have a lot of wounded, um,
Mhm.
but they don't actually have a lot of casualties. Soon, Captain Winters finds himself promoted to 2nd Battalion's executive officer. Yes, he has concern about leaving Easy Company, but knows they are in good hands with Lieutenant Moose Heiliger. Um, in the aftermath, this says of the disastrous Operation Market Garden. I don't know about disastrous. I would say unsuccessful in that it didn't reach its objective and it had heavy casualties, but most of these operations did have heavy casualties. So, yes, we are in the aftermath of Operation Market Garden. Easy Company is assigned to rescue a large group of British paratroopers who are trapped behind enemy lines. And then later, with winter, I'd say it's winter approaching or Christmas approaching, the men suddenly find all passes canceled and they are quickly moved to Bastogne to help defend the city from the German offensive. The episode was directed by Tom Hanks, and it also has a cameo by Jimmy Fallon and by Tom Hanks. So, yeah, I think the summary is okay. It is we're in the aftermath, right in the kind of the immediate aftermath of
Mhm.
Operation Market Garden. They're defending against a German counteroffensive. Um, so part of I think we kind of talked about last time, like they had parachuted into three different cities that kind of ran in a northeast direction, And they took the
Mhm.
first two, they just didn't take the furthest one closest to the Rhine. So instead of now the line with between France and Germany, the front line of the war is not like there is a straight line, but then there's a piece that kind of juts out up to the northeast, and that's where they are. So they're all kind of surrounded, and the Germans are attacking on that line. So that's kind of where they are. Um, just short of, I can't remember the city name. I think it's Arnhem, where the
Yeah.
third city was, and that is where close to where the British paratroopers are surrounded. But interesting, they called the area the island because the entire area is surrounded by waterways, canals, dikes. It's kind of a treacherous area for them, for the military to be in, for the tanks to be in. And we did have what, like 35, 30 some men in Easy Company. And I think there were around 300 SS that they're facing in this. So
Yep,
it's
that's
it's set up.
exactly what it says right
Yep.
here. Actually, the chapter is called "The Island,"
Yep.
that describes this in the book. And 35 men, a platoon of Easy Company had routed two German companies of about 300 men. American casualties. So casualties does include wounded and dead. So those included from Fox Company and Easy Company. One dead, 22 wounded. German casualties were 50 killed, 11 captured, and about 100 wounded. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wounded, a lot of wounded, but not a lot, only one killed in Easy
yeah,
Company. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So very interesting story. So let's talk a little bit about the characters before we bring on the slides. And maybe I try not to hit my microphone stand here. Um, anyway, so obviously Captain Winters is featured in this. This is mainly his story from his point of view, but I thought some other really good characters were introduced and seen. Uh, Particularly Nixon, who's one of our favorites, is featured in this quite a bit. I thought he did a great job. There's a hilarious scene that we'll get to right at the beginning where Nixon's trying to sleep in, and Winters is like, "No, we got to get to the command post," and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna dump your water jug on him, but it's not filled with water." Um, so evidently he had used a
Yeah.
different ban, and that was pretty funny. And that's actually from the book. That's actually in here, the book.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
funny. I wondered if that really happened or if that was something that they did for TV.
yeah. Now the thing about Easy Company, one of the cool things that they said that Winters was their best battlefield commander, and actually Nixon was one of their best tactical officers or tactician intelligence officers coming out of Toccoa and everything. So those two men were really used to their strengths. However, Winters has just been promoted to XO at the beginning of this, and most of this is flashback, but he always felt like his best position was actually leading the company rather than the battalion. So we're introduced to the new Easy Company commander. Do you want to talk about Moose for a minute?
Well, I can't. Yeah, Moose. I think, I wish this series, because he becomes the commander. I wish we would have actually gotten a little more on him before this point in time in the show. I don't think that we've actually seen enough of him, but um Winners, it's indicated in here with the dialogue that all of the other men, Winners, Nix, the other leadership think he's a good leader. They all have faith in him to lead Easy Company. Um, but I wish we had seen a little bit more of him in the show, actually. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, he was with Easy Company in Toccoa, from what I read, and then he was transferred to another unit.
Oh,
He
okay.
transferred to, I think, the battalion, guarding the battalion out of Toccoa. He did go to Normandy, but he was with the battalion rather than with like Easy or Fox or any of the other companies. So, oh wow, Dogface 2104 Dogface mentioned something interesting. Let's show this real quick. He said he
Oh,
visited Moose's grave a few days back, buried in Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, Concord, Massachusetts.
oh wow.
Look at that. Really cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I was so happy the first time that I saw this episode, um, when we find out that he doesn't die of his injuries. Um, because that was tragic, that whole incident.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. Want to welcome everybody to the show. Hail to Dogface, 2104 Dogface, Swift -1, Agent Pepsi 1. Thank you for being here. I know Swift -1 is in the chat as well, and SP4H was here for a while too. So welcome. Thank you guys for being here. If anybody else is here, please say hi. And if you got any other anything you want to share about this episode, feel free to share it in the chat. We'd be glad to do this. After all, we're not historians. We're just two people who love Band of Brothers and love history, right?
Yep, just love the show, and yeah, it's great when the chat chimes in with all their info and experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely encourage that. So another couple of people that are highlighted here. Joe Liebgott. He's got
Yeah.
an interesting scene that we'll talk about going up. But he's very interesting that he came up. Now we've talked about different speculation about him. The book and the story say that he has a Jewish German background, which is interesting. But I've read and heard somewhere that he may not have been Jewish. So I don't
Yeah, I
know.
think I've heard that he's actually not, and
Mhm.
maybe that was not accurate. I can't remember where I've heard, but I actually heard that maybe he was actually Catholic.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So not 100% sure on that, but his character's interesting. We do get quite a bit more of him in this episode that we got than we got in previous episodes of the show. And he's kind of a hothead and a little bit bloodthirsty, I think, from what we see and hear. So I don't know if that's accurate or if he's portrayed that way. So uh, looking forward to getting into that a little bit more later.
Yeah. Also, another person I forgot to put on our list was Webster. Webster, I've actually featured a little bit in this.
Yes.
His book also chronicled a lot of the action that happens at the beginning of this episode because
Yeah.
he was heavily involved.
And he has
So,
a hilarious line in this one.
oh yes, he does.
It's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
it's even
they
lined
got
in the
me."
book. They
That's
got me.
really
I can't
funny.
believe I said that.
Yeah, that's really
So,
funny. That's good.
yeah, the book
Uh,
goes on to talk a little bit about Webster in the sense that he was a Harvard almost graduate, and
mhm.
they had wanted to put him in leadership positions several times, but he was one of those that just wanted to do his job and kept turning down promotions and stuff, which is interesting. So,
Oh, wow. So I was
yeah.
wondering, are you able to turn down a promotion in that kind of situation? I would feel like if they gave you an order to do something, you would have to do it.
I don't know. I don't know the specifics. I know he's a private, so you're working your way up, and
Right.
I guess you could turn down a promotion. I mean, it says in the book that he turned down squad leadership and some other stuff, and so if you're turning those things down, I'm not sure that you're going to get corporal or up to sergeant very quickly if you're not willing to take the lead in an initial squad. Um, 2104 Dogface says, yeah, you can turn them down. So yeah, he pretty much did that. It's what it said in the book.
Okay.
So it's interesting. And then AJ Pepsi 1 chimes in a little bit about Bastogne here. We'll see what she has to say. Bastogne was designed as a rest area. The area is considered impassable by Allied command, although the Germans' 7th Panzer under Rommel pushed through it in 1940. So interesting. But yeah, we're going to get into Bastogne towards the end of this. But let's do this. And also one other character on here, Bill Garnier does show up in this.
Yep.
He was part of the initial assault. He did get wounded and he left the hospital. And he has a funny line in this, which I thought was
Yeah.
pretty funny. The book didn't go into the details, but apparently he stole a motorcycle and was riding the motorcycle and got hit while he was riding it, and that's how he got wounded.
Yeah, he was
Sure.
joyriding. I mean, the show doesn't go into it much either, but I was gonna say, great to have Wild Bill back because he's such a funny part of the show. It's a great character. Um, and you didn't mention that Foxhole Norman. We get our introduction to Foxhole Norman.
Oh yeah,
Like it
yeah,
or not.
yeah. I wanted to wait on that because oh my gosh, yeah, there's going to be a lot on him on Foxhole Norman. But yeah, Agent Pepsi 1 further clarifies it because she was in the military as well. Yes, you can turn down promotion. It's not normal. Privates are normally never squad leaders. Normally, less than an E4 don't know about World War II. So yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would, well, maybe there would, people are getting killed. They might not have a choice on who ends up leading or who is promoting, who's getting promoted.
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, and it's one of those things also in war. I mean, promotions are done real quick.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so 2104 Dogface can tell us a little bit more about Bill Garnier since he actually met him and talked to him and heard some of his stories. Let me see what it says here. Bill riding the bike on the top of the dike. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I think he was riding a bike on top of the dike and got shot.
Was it another instance where he just kind of snagged the bike and he wasn't he wasn't supposed to? Was it one of those like he kind of
I wouldn't be surprised. I know that they had bikes and other trucks that were going in and out to bring supplies and stuff. The other thing about it is they're real close to Germany and the Rhine River, so they're pretty
Mhm.
close. Um,
Yeah, it was a German bike, yeah. Well, they're
yeah,
surrounded pretty much, right? Because 'Cause they're on a little piece of land that's kinda jutting out from
mhm.
the line, so they're pretty much surrounded on all sides except for one, like a
Yeah.
little peninsula.
Yes, I wish I could bring a map or draw a map, but I'll bring pictures back after I go on my trip, so we'll have that when I get back. But yeah, 2104 Dogface said, yeah, I think it was a German bike. Yeah, that's a funny line that they tell him. I don't have a picture of it, but he comes back and he says, I understand there's gonna be a football game. It's like and Winters tells him, no more joy riding, okay? So um,
Yeah.
but I'll tell you another funny story when we get to it that's in the book that's not in the show that just tells you about all the stuff that all the hijinks that went on there before. But let's get into some of these slides and go through it. So here we go with starts out with Winters getting up early in the morning. And then here's the hilarious scene that we have with Nixon. Now, uh, how it describes in the book is that he was in a sleeping bag and he's pulling his legs and holding his legs before he does everything. But here are the slides, and yep, it pours it on him. And then Nixon gets all mad at him, which I think is just hilarious.
Yeah, I like in this episode too how we get more with Nixon and Winters together, right? They have such an unusual friendship because they're
Hmm.
such opposite type people, and it's great to see their interaction and how they this kind of unlikely friendship develops.
Hmm. Yep, 2104 Dogface says, plus at the time they were getting British rations, which was hated. So they were doing a lot of scrounging in the area for any food and booze. Yeah, I described that in the book quite a bit, that they were doing a lot of that. So we get into this and he's going to the meeting and there's Moose. Now, I will tell you guys real quick in the book, it describes something a little bit different. So after Winters went to battalion, apparently they had one or two other commanders that kind of didn't fit the bill before they got Moose. I don't know how long they lasted. From the book, it seems like they only lasted a little bit of time before they really got Moose. Um, so it's not as quick as it happens in the show. And then 2104 Dogface says, telling the story with the P was epic as he would start laughing.
I bet because that could have was Nixon was likely hungover, right? And
Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
that's from
yeah, definitely
yeah.
hungover. And I thought it was funny later on. He's like Nixon's like, I should really stop this. And Winters was like, what? Getting this alcohol out of your footlocker. He's like, well, maybe you should stop altogether. And he's like, what? Hiding all that in my footlocker, captain, for goodness sakes. So I
Yeah,
just,
that was funny too, right? Yeah.
yeah. So this British colonel has come back to tell them where his people are. This is getting into a little bit of the Operation Pegasus that we'll go into in a minute. So all this is flashback setting up the next set of stories. But uh, the interesting thing about this colonel is that he was wounded. He was in a German hospital. He escaped the German hospital, swam across the Rhine, and found Colonel Sink and the U.S. military personnel to go and rescue these guys. It was British paratroopers, uh, Dutch resistance, and apparently you had 4 or 5 pilots. So this might have been one of the few instances where you had Masters of the Air kind of coincide with Band of Brothers.
Oh, wow. I have
So
not
just
seen that, so
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, Masters of the Air really doesn't show a whole lot. It shows the Dutch resistance, but it doesn't show, Operation Pegasus, but it's interesting. All right. So we get a little bit of that, and you got Winters, and they're drilling him on reports. And one of the things that Winters didn't like about being promoted to XO, what he wasn't trained for, is all the paperwork and the administration stuff. So
Right.
can't blame him. Wouldn't want to
No,
be sitting behind a typewriter typing reports. So,
no.
but, all
It's
right.
great the way this was done though, right? Because you get in the very beginning of the episode where
Mhm.
he's coming over the dike and he shoots the German who looks like a teenager, which I thought, was surprising because it's SS and the kid looks so young.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
it
yeah.
that I thought found really, incredible, and just you don't know, right, when it flashes back first to this scene that he's been promoted when he starts, typing this out, and it's so cool how he starts typing, and then you kinda hear the gunfire, and you get into the next scene where the kid they say, "Oh, everything's quiet," and then all of a sudden, someone just bursts through the door wounded, and it's kinda all hell breaks loose after that point.
Yeah, and you get the scene with the dog
Mhm.
playing fetch. Um, so here's what happened with this. So one of the cool things about this that Winters in his reports, he never used the word I. He always used we because he wanted to give credit to the men, which I thought was pretty awesome. By the way, Nemesis of Eden is in the chat. Hi, how are you? Glad you're here. Um, so let me kind of set the scene. So the men are gathered in one of the places in Holland, and they've got patrols going around. They're real close to the German line, as we mentioned, and one of the patrols have been fired upon by the Germans, and they bring in somebody who had been hit, and that's where Winters and his team are, and Winters gets the men together, and they go off to kind of really find out what happened. So there's them in preparation, and then the guy gets hit right here. They're bringing him in, and Winters organizes a patrol. So he's got a small patrol coming up. He's got 2 different divisions behind him that they had to organize late. And basically, what he does is he tells them to stay here, and he's going to go up and scout where the Germans are up on this dike. And so you can kind of see how this is. This, several different areas of dikes because the Netherlands is really sea level. They're barely above it, so you've got a lot of dikes and a lot of waterways
Yeah.
in this part. That's why it was called the island, as Heather had mentioned. So he's on the dike, and he gets his men to come with him after finding this group of Germans up on one of the dikes, and he signals to them. And what he does is this is before the daylight. This is still at night. This is like 4 or 5 in the morning. He gets some of the men, and they get in position. They're told to crawl up as quietly as they can so the Germans won't hear them. And they're all set. And he tells them, I thought this was really cool. He tells them, "Hey, you got this guy, you got this guy, you got this guy." He tells them where to shoot, and then he's like, "On my command, 1, 2, 3," and they shoot, and they kill like 7 of them. And then the machine guns are set to go off right after that, and then the mortars are right there. So there's a German machine gun right there that's about to fire on them, and the mortar is fired, and the mortar is a direct hit on that machine gun. They take it out like that.
Yeah.
And the cool thing that you don't know that's in the book is that the accuracy of these guys in Easy Company is so good that their mortars hit their target. And usually a mortar doesn't necessarily hit the target, it hits around the target. It usually takes 1 or 2 shots to actually hit the target. They hit it first shot.
Wow.
Wow. Which
Yeah,
is
that's
pretty awesome.
impressive, yeah. Yeah, even the shots, when they're all shooting, it does look like they're very accurate too, and I wondered, is that, like, portrayed this way in the movie, or are the guys really that accurate, with their weapons? So, yeah, really cool.
Yeah, so they had machine gun fire, and they used tracer fire, and the tracer fire was up above the Germans when they shot it, so they could see where it was. And as he was coming down, that's when they did the mortar, and it just shoo. So apparently, according to the book, that they had practiced so much on different targets with mortar fire that they got to the point where you could tell them whatever degrees are about this much, and they were pretty accurate.
Yeah.
That's how good Easy Company was.
The
Also, Nemesis Eden mentioned that the Germans were shooting and they gave away their position. Yes, yep, that's exactly what happened on that.
Yeah, Sigvaldason was responding in here that, yeah, toward the end that they were really young, even the SS, and that it was, I won't say his name, the youth group, forced into combat, which, yeah, I mean, Europe had been at war already quite some time by the time we got in the war, and so, yeah, I can see that. It's still shocking because I always think of SS as, the elite division, and to have someone so young, it's just so surprising to see that there.
Yeah. So as we get, you know, winners and the guys after taking out this German group, they retreat strategically to wait for the rest of the company to come up. And it's at this point that he's kind of in an interesting situation because they're in an area where if the Germans decided to rush them, they'd be sitting ducks. And so basically, Major Winters has, well, at this time he's captain. He has no other choice but hey, I've got to attack. So he gathers the guys together. But then he's got a couple machine guns. He's got 3 units, and essentially what he does is he gets one unit's going to go up the right, one's going to go up the left, and then he's going to take everybody to the center. And one of the things about Captain Winters that he was very much a leader. He was always doing patrols with his men, which not a lot of leaders necessarily did. He also his main two main things were follow me, was his first one, and then hang tough was his other saying. But follow me, he basically gets in there and he tells his guys, okay, tells them how they're going to do it, and then he's like, when you see the smoke, go, and then he starts to go, and he just starts hauling. And then finally, when the smoke starts going, the guys charge, which is really interesting. And then here, Heather, is your scene. He comes up on the dike, and boom.
Yeah. At this kid, and the way they look at each other first, I mean, the way this is done is so impactful, how he looks, and, the kid thinks, I mean, he doesn't expect, right, an American soldier to be there. I'm sure he just thinks, "Oh, it's like one of the German soldiers," because the shock on his face, and it's so to kill someone so close up like that too, it's just you can tell that they kinda show the impact that it has on winners after that, but, yeah, I love how this episode really shows Winter's leadership. Like he's leading from the front. He's always going first. He's not asking anyone to do anything that he's not doing. Plus his tactical skills, right? To think ahead, like here's where they are, here's how many we're facing, and if we just stay here, they're gonna outflank us on this side. Like he's always thinking on his feet and thinking like, what do we need to do next? He's not just kind of sitting there waiting, and I love that, yeah, the way that's filmed with the red smoke and him running and you just hear the feet, like, hitting the ground as they're moving, that's a really cool scene the way that that's done.
Oh yeah, brilliant cinematography and everything else. But I will tell you this, Heather, as 2104 Dogface says, the scene is wrong, and here's what
Yeah.
actually happened. Here's how it describes it in the book. So basically, what happened is Winters gets to the top and he sees all of these troops. He's like, "Oh my god, what the?"
Right.
So what he does is a German sees him, and uh, the German throws his hand grenade, and Winters grabs his hand grenade. Winters throws it. Well, he dodges the German hand grenade. I guess it goes off, and he's able to dodge it, and nothing happens. His hand grenade lands, and he forgot to take the safety tape off of his hand grenade, so his hand grenade does not go off. It's then that Winters starts shooting, and then the guys catch up to him, and they all start shooting, and they really are in kind of a valley area, so it was kind of a turkey shoot. But yeah, they threw grenades, but Winters had left his friction tape on his, holding the spoons, so the grenade didn't go off. Exactly. Yeah, 2104 Dogface. That's exactly what they said. But yeah, those Germans were right there. And the funny thing is that they turned around to try and fire, but they were Winters described it as everything being in slow motion. Um, it was like he was going faster than anybody else, and I'm sure with his with his adrenaline, but he didn't really have time to do the ready, fire, aim either. Apparently, from the book, he shot from his hip, and
Wow.
got the initial guy, and then he killed quite a few Germans right here. I mean, it was a total turkey shoot.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, it looks like as he's when he's coming up by himself, I mean, it looks like he's just hitting guys like one right after the other. So
mhm,
yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's an incredible shot himself. But
mhm,
yeah, and you would just be running on, I think, automatic there, right? You'd have to
mhm,
be. And yeah, it's one of those weird moments where time just kind of slows down and he's just seeing everything clearly. But
mhm.
it's incredible that he didn't get shot there. He didn't get hit.
Well, he went through like a couple of magazines from what I understand, and then let's see, 2104 Dogface says, "No, I'm double checking the info, but I think at this time Winters might have had a Guth Special M1 rifle converted to full auto." Which, wow, oh my gosh,
Mhm.
he really took out a bunch of people if he had that. But
Yeah.
apparently, he ran out of bullets and then reloaded real quick as well. By this time, both the other companies had caught up and they were doing that. And then the Germans started to retreat, and he called in uh, the bomber division, the British bombers, to you know fire their mortars and try and take out some of the retreating Germans. Apparently, right after this, before they started taking prisoners and stuff like that, they caught some people under the dike, which is your 11 prisoners. But they were Winters wanted to pursue the guys that were getting away with their ferries across the Rhine, and they went up to try and do that. But the German artillery started firing back, and they had to duck back down, and
Mhm.
were able to stop them going back across the Rhine. But they did enough damage in this, which was significant, and they got 11 prisoners that were SS troops, which I thought was interesting. Um,
Yeah, I like at the end of this too, when we're talking about Winters and Nix are standing there having a conversation, and Nix is kind of tallying up like all the Germans who are dead, who are wounded, and he's like, "Oh, well, that's pretty good for." Because there was one guy killed in Easy, and you could look at Winter's face, like it's like he feels that one guy who was killed, and plus he's looking at all the Germans that he killed too, and he's just a more serious, thoughtful, like, yeah, that's not, I mean, any life taken is not, it's just not the way that he would look at that versus Nyx.
mhm.
I think it's interesting to see the contrast again there, where Nyx is just kind of like, yeah, well, that's a good trade-off, and uh just not as serious of way of looking at it.
Yeah. And then 2104 Dogface has some more information about Winter's gun here. Forrest Guth had tweaked some of the guys' M1 carbines to full auto before D-Day. Winters had one but lost it in the jump. And then he got an N1 Garand rifle, which is really cool. And then Sigvaldason says, surprised the SS were so executed there on the spot after that SS massacre of U.S. prisoners. Yeah, I think what happened was so this is where we're getting into Liebgott, and basically what had happened is they wanted those prisoners. He wanted to take those prisoners to battalion because they would have intel on where the Germans were, and I know the SS had killed a lot of U.S. troops as well. There was not a lot of prisoner taking on either side sometimes in this war, but here's where he tells Liebgott. Now, Liebgott is interesting. We've got his background that we have the show background. We don't know if it's true what his religious background is, but according to Winters, he was a killer of a soldier. Like he would kill Germans and particularly German prisoners. He was an angry person that would take them out. So knowing this, he had him empty his rounds and gave him one bullet. And he said, if you shoot one prisoner, the rest will jump you.
Right.
So Liebgott was also the one that was still firing on all the Germans after they started to retreat. He
Mm.
was also the one that said we got 7 in one blow. He just was very very much gun ho for that, and a lot of these guys were at the time because they were mad. Um, you
I
know,
can see why you'd have, especially after you'd been in combat for a while. I mean, I can see why you would have that attitude, right? You're getting
mhm,
shot at constantly.
mhm.
Surprised more people weren't like that.
Yeah, many troopers in Easy had killed prisoner wars, especially on D-Day. Yeah,
Yeah.
because they couldn't take
Oh yeah.
prisoners with them. Yeah.
Yeah, on D-Day for sure, because they just weren't set up for to take any
Mhm.
prisoners, and there's really not much choice.
Yep, and the SS too. Yep, Sigvaldason adds that. So very interesting. This is also where you had Webster get shot, and Webster, uh, he avoided getting shot, and then he finally got shot like in the leg, and he's like, "Oh, they got me," and then he remarks back, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe I said that," which
I
is just
know.
funny.
That was
But
great. I can't believe I said that. Like,
yeah, but it's funny because he crawled back towards battalion because they didn't have any jeeps at the time that were coming up, and he went to go after a German raincoat, and finally there was a jeep coming up, and then he got fired upon trying to go for that raincoat, and he stopped, and finally the jeep came, and they were able to put him on it because they had taken another person who was more badly wounded, and he got out of there. Um, let's see here. What
yeah,
else?
and interestingly enough, Webster, which we'll see later, is not one of the ones who goes AWOL from the hospital
Mhm.
and comes right back. He stays a while. He's out for a while, and not so well received when he comes back.
Yep, there's an entire episode that we'll get to, but this kind of sets it up. So,
Yeah.
yep. And then 2104 Dogface says when writing the book, they really didn't trust Ambrose, so they would tell him.
Oh, like you mean they didn't tell him everything, maybe, or
Yeah,
didn't?
about killing the POWs. Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't say that I would blame him. I mean, Ambrose is a great historian and he got a lot of stuff right and he did a lot of good stuff, but also I think those guys knew that he was also, you know, in it to tell the story, but also to make the money. And I don't know if they didn't really know him as well, how they would trust him to present the story.
Well, and
Especially.
how that's perceived today too, right?
Mhm.
Versus
Oh
the
yeah.
time, because I think not everyone understands that. Like at the time when you were there, you didn't always have the ability to take prisoners, the stress that you were under. Whereas people now just expect, oh, you shouldn't kill someone who's surrendered. And that's maybe not the most realistic viewpoint that people of
Hmm.
today have versus, the situation that they were in then. And so I can kind of see why they wouldn't, necessarily wanna say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, you're in certain situations where these guys are surrounded quite a bit and close to
Right.
enemy lines. I mean, you take prisoners, where are you going to keep them? How are you going to keep
Yeah.
them? How do
Yeah.
you keep watch when you need men to defend everything? And then what happens if they rush you and try and either get
Right.
away or sabotage something? I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very delicate thing. It's not like you could just put them on a thing and ship them back to like England where they could be in an actual military prison or something like that,
Right.
you know?
So
And
it's
it's not like,
easy for people looking from the outside to criticize, like, "Hey, you shouldn't have just shot them. You should have taken a prisoner," but that may not be, it's easier said than done, right?
mhm,
To try to do that.
yeah. So, yeah, and here it is. You got 1 round. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, this is where they find out they were SS, and this part's true where he gets the water from Nyx. So, Herc 130 says
Yeah.
hi. Hi, Herc 130.
Hey, Herc. It's Fabio, otherwise known as Fabio. That's his second name.
Fabio. Cool. Yeah, and this is basically this happened actually afterwards, but he basically promotes him to Battalion XO, which is great. And so now we get into kind of the second part of the story, which is kind of it's an interesting thing, but I don't think it's you don't find as much about it when you're looking it up. This is Operation Pegasus, and essentially, Easy Company got another XO that didn't last. Apparently, he had a self-inflicted wound, which caused him to go back, which is another story in the book. Hang on, let me see what
I think,
2104 dog face. Go
oh,
ahead.
yeah, one of the other things too, when we were at the last scene, what the reason that, that Winters got promoted is Major Horton died, and, mostly we know Major Horton through Luz's impersonations, and we didn't
Mhm.
see him a lot, but, yeah, he was killed in that too, which is another piece of
Yeah,
that we
which is
got.
another area. Yeah, Major Horton was killed, and basically he that's where Winters took his place. But anyway, Moose takes control of the company, and Operation Pegasus is basically they have to go. There are 120 English soldiers across the Rhine, and apparently 5 American flyers and 10 Dutch resistance that were with them. And basically, they had to get boats, and they had to go across the Rhine and really ferry these guys back who are behind enemy lines. And the cool thing about it is they were able to do this silently and quickly. And the success of the mission was that they were able to do it without uh, firing a shot or any shots fired at them, which is amazing.
Yeah, this
And
one's incredible, just goes off, but seemingly without a hitch. They
yep,
don't spend much time on it, I think, right, because it goes really smoothly.
yes, exactly. And actually, Tom Hanks is in one of these scenes right here as a cameo where you see it. But apparently, in real life, when they after they rescued him, those guys were headed back to England. They didn't really uh, drink with them afterwards or anything like that. They would give them the berets and stuff as a thank you. Um, and the funny thing that I heard is when they were ferrying them back across, the British troops kept saying, "Thank you, Yank. Glad you're here," and they were real loud. And
Right?
apparently, apparently, the Easy Company guys had, "Shut up! We're trying to do this silently. We don't get shot." So it was kind of funny, but you know, uh, yeah, 2104 Dogface. Yeah, the post rescue scene with the beer and toasting never happened. Yeah, that's correct. That was added in there just so that they could explain it because they really didn't shoot a whole lot of it, but it was interesting. I thought that was fascinating that we got them and helped them to live another day. Um, Hang on before I get to the next slide. So I don't have any slides of the next scene, but you go into after this rescue. Winters as the XO wanted to do a little bit more with the men. He hated the fact that he was doing all the typing, so he talks to Moose and he wants to go on rounds with Moose. And there's a little bit more details that I've heard about this part. So Easy Company was spread out along the dike, and you had different areas that they were spread out, and so he's going to inspect all the areas with Moose, and they're going on to Harry Welsh's position, and so they call Harry and say, "Hey, we're coming. Let us know." And they come up, and apparently a sentry stops them. Moose didn't know the password right away, kind of fumbles, and the person shoots 3 times and hits Moose. In the book, it says in the shoulder and in the ankle, and he falls to the ground. And in the show, it shows that Winters catches him and tells him to hold the fire. And it turns out that it's a new private replacement, but that's not true. According to the book, here's what actually happened. Moose gets hit. Winters jumps down in the ditch, uh, avoiding that, pulls Moose into the ditch, saving his life. Harry comes running up. They stop the ditch, and apparently they get Moose, and they're loading him with morphine. They go get Doc Rowe, and the sentry was actually a veteran who they had never named and he won't name, and basically
Mhm.
had him transferred out of the unit to protect him. But yeah, it was a veteran. It was not a replacement. And so
Wow.
we will never know who it is. It's not named in the book. I don't know that it's the
Uh,
person's name anywhere in any of the footage that I've seen. But yeah, 2104 Dogface. Yeah, the Sentry was a veteran. It was not a replacement like it's depicted here. And
so was
yeah,
that true that Moose didn't know or he didn't respond quick enough with the other? Because I know how they used to say flash thunder. I don't know if they're still doing that or if there's a different password. Did
it
like
was
the
a different
sentry
password.
say halt and he didn't say the password, or did he just shoot? Like was he jumpy and shot? Like did that actually I wasn't sure how that actually went down.
Well, it was dark. You couldn't see. And really, basically, Moose forgot the password and fumbled with it and
Mhm.
then started to say it's Moose. But the Sentry was like, he couldn't tell the difference. And if you can't tell the password within a quick second, he's only
Right.
got one choice, fight or flee. And Winters basically recalling this said that it essentially, the Sentry was doing his job.
Mhm.
Um, it's just that there should have been something more to it. Another thought here, and this was a video, and it's speculation because we'll never know, not unless Winters wants to really tell. But it's speculated that Harry forgot to tell the Sentry because Harry had been drinking. So, but I
Oh,
don't know. 2104 Dogface says he doesn't call in the guy saying who it was. And then he basically said, yeah, the password's always changed every few days, which, yeah, absolutely. Passwords always change. They always try and keep it so that, because I mean, you got to understand where they were. During the daytime, you had shelling and other types of stuff, but at night, you never knew if the Germans would send a patrol to try and recon U.S. positions or not. And so that was a real threat. That's what started all this at the beginning of the episode. So,
right.
but yeah, Moose got shot, and then they had a new person who now leads Easy Company, Lieutenant Foxhole Norman Dyke.
Yeah. I found it interesting too at the end of this scene, the medic, Eugene Rowe, who I love, we'll get to see more later, that he kind of lays into them for not remembering how many Surrettes they've given him. I think it's morphine.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
yeah, they're supposed to, I think, lay it on him so that they can count so that they don't overdose. And yeah, he just lays into them both for not remembering that.
absolutely. And yeah. When you give them morphine, you're supposed to lay the thing on them so that the doctors know how much morphine, because you could overdose on
Yeah.
morphine.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, and Sig Balduson brings up a good point. German sentry on the Atlantic wall killed a famous U-boat skipper for not knowing the current password. So it happened in the military on both sides more frequently than we might think. So,
Right. Well, yeah, because they're encountering Germans everywhere and then it's dark and yeah, I
hmm
mean, you'd have to know. You can't just let people walk up. So, yeah, that was rough. I remember I hated I was upset seeing that, seeing Moose go down right after he gets in position. And especially, because like yeah, we end up getting Dyke, Foxhole Norman, who's terrible and it's stressful for Winters, right? Giving up that command and you could see how worried he is before they go on Operation Pegasus, right? Like, he keeps telling Moose, like, repeating, like, "Oh, yeah, make sure you do this, make sure you do that," because you could tell how nervous he is, and Nix is kinda like, "Oh, it'll be fine," he's more worried, about his bacon sandwich than,
yeah,
than what's gonna happen with the operation. So, yeah, this was really tragic. I hated seeing that.
yeah. So here's what happens after this. So they get pulled off the line. They got replacements, and they go back to Mourmelin Le Grand, which is in France. And basically, they have downtime for, November 26th through December 18th. So a couple weeks.
Okay.
And so the guys, it's closer to Paris. And so they get, passes to Paris. And Winters actually, we show he gets promoted. He's like, you are need some vacation. And the interesting thing here, I don't know if you caught it. Nix goes, yeah, I'm going to go see a girl in England. But what's the other thing about Nixon that you already know?
Uh I don't know. I didn't realize he said he was going to England. I thought he mentioned a girl,
Yeah, he
but I
mentioned a
didn't.
girl in a town in England, but he's married.
Oh, he's very well, that doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, no, it doesn't surprise.
I
It's not
mean, it's
surprising. I'm
right.
not making that big deal. I'm not trying to do many morals on it, and a lot of guys probably did that stuff. But it's interesting because later on you're going to hear about his divorce and the dog and all this other stuff. And
Um,
I the funny thing is that if you catch this now, when we talk about it later, you could go, well, yeah, but he's, so
yeah, with Nick's, it doesn't really surprise me. I mean,
no,
that's probably a marriage of convenience, right, in his position, or like, because he seemed like he came from a wealthier family. It's just like, "Oh, I married who I was supposed to, and now I'm gonna do whatever I want." So,
yeah. I think Nemesis Eden. I don't know if he was married. She said he's engaged, so she might know better than I do. But yeah, yeah. So we'll hear him rant later on about she got the dog. It's my dog.
oh, yeah, I remember that. I do remember that now. I just completely
Yeah,
forgotten about that. Yeah, I just was
yeah,
like, no, that
yeah.
scene was funny. Uh, how Harry Wells just like, "Oh, Marina Dietrich's there, or Marlena Dietrich. I'm going there, like, I need to go." So yeah, so
Yeah,
they're all kinda, and I think Winters would have stayed and worked. They have to, like, force him to go take a break.
yeah, and that's the thing. He was like that because he was very much serious mind. He was in wartime, but I think they took some liberties with this section. But it wouldn't surprise me if guys went through this. But this part is interesting with him and Francis seeing the kid and remembering everything that happened. Um, I think what they're trying to show is they're trying to show a little bit about what uh, uh, PTSD is like. And I think this is an interesting example of it. You see him trying to relax at cafe and another soldier kind of bumping him. And then you see him, finally get a warm bath, but he sees this kid on the rail station and it reminds him of the German kid that he shot. And I don't know. I think that's interesting um, how they depicted that. And I really think it's fascinating that these soldiers probably did experience some sort of PTSD, and Winters probably handled it internally because he wasn't a drinker. A lot of the other guys, I read some stuff where they had to cancel passes to Paris because everybody was getting in trouble because they were drinking so much and getting into fistfights and stuff like that. And it was interesting, but yeah, Nemesis Eden says this. She says an interesting portrayal of PTSD. I always felt bad for this kid, which yeah, I agree 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
I think too, the train noise and the
mhm,
lights flashing like that too, I think is part of what triggered it, right? Because 'Cause you're hearing that rattle and the lights going off and on, and see after all the mortars at night and the flashing and the gunfire,
mhm,
it seems like that, too, is kind of bringing that on a little bit, and then the young kid, um
mhm.
'cause Winters is not, yeah. Oh, Nemesis of Eden is a dude, by the way.
Oh,
I'm
dude,
so
sorry.
sorry,
I
dude.
never seen.
Yeah.
Sorry, just had
It's
a chick's picture on there, so I didn't know.
it's the nice hair in the picture.
Yeah, sorry about that. Nemesis Eden, apologize. Um, yeah, and then 2104 Dog Faces, the airborne, especially the 82nd, ruined it for the 101st going Paris after Normandy. Yeah,
Mm.
um, it was interesting. And then the other thing that I read in the book, which is not in the episode, which I thought was hilarious, is that apparently the sergeants had their own barracks. And I think this is after, I'm not sure if this is before or after Bill came back, but they got a hold of some French champagne
Really?
and they weren't sure what, they hadn't tasted it before. And they opened it up and thought it was like soda pop, and it tasted like soda pop because it was bubbly and stuff. And so they
Uh,
drank it like soda
and
pop.
it's sweet. Yeah.
Yeah, it's sweet. Anyway, so apparently they tore up the barracks getting into this big brawl.
Oh,
And
no.
Lipton comes in and he sees this because he's a master sergeant, and he basically gets him to stop. And before they pass out, he's like, "You better fix this." And he didn't decide to punish him anymore, but he has him fix the barracks before they all pass out. in a drunken thing. He's like, "You guys are supposed to be the leaders of these guys that set example. You can't do this." And it's just a really
Uh,
funny
I mean,
area.
you gotta figure a bunch of young guys,
Oh yeah.
in the middle of this nightmare, you have no idea how long you're gonna live. Like, I'm not surprised at all that they get, everyone's getting drunk whenever they can. It's just,
Mhm. Yeah.
it'd be rough.
Yeah. It was interesting. And then we have the funny scene where they're watching a John Wayne, Marlene Dietrich movie. Uh,
So, were they basically they're in the same spot? I was gonna ask a question about timing because
yeah.
when we start, it's like early October,
Hmm.
right? And that goes kind of the fighting along there seems like it's around a week. Now we're more mid-December almost. So, um,
All right.
I don't know. Are they kind of stationed like I guess they're just this is normal. They're patrols. They're stationed in that same area, just kind of dug in there and um for the like at what through October, November into December. They're not moving
Yep.
much.
So October 2nd through November 25th, they were in Holland. So so they were there, and then November 26th through December 18th, they were pulled off the line in Mormel Legrand.
Okay. So in November they're pulled off, so they're back. Okay.
Hmm.
It wasn't
Yep.
quite clear from that how because all of a sudden it's like December, right? And they're off
Hmm.
the line, so it wasn't 100%
Hmm.
clear. Yeah, SP4H says a room full of NCOs can be far, far more of a problem than privates, airmen. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently Bill was there too. Oh my God, Drink with Bill.
Yeah.
He told this story. It was epic. Yeah, I could imagine. Um, and then here's what 2104 Doc says. All of them said that something as they grew up drinking beer in the States. So yeah, champagne was something new to them and interesting.
I'm
But
sure.
the other thing about this is that the guys were restless and they were physical, and so one of the big things was a football game that was supposed to be played on Christmas Day. It was a really big deal, but they played baseball, football, all kinds of things because they had to have something to do. They even organized 5 mile hikes.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, because these guys were just. I mean, you're dealing with like
Young
18,
guys,
20
they're
year
young.
old,
Yeah.
yeah, young guys, and they're restless. But I love this scene, where Luz imitates John Wayne.
Yeah, Luz is
Which kind
great. I miss him when he's not in the episodes. He's so funny. This is
of,
sad though, like Buck, I was gonna ask you what did it say what happened to Buck, like anything specifically, or is it like just accumulated stress over all these battles because he doesn't look good now and it's funny if the this was interesting. Listen, if you go back and rewatch this, listen to this episode when Winters comes up behind him and says, "Hey, Buck," the on the movie theater thing, it says, "You're not looking good." Like the movie's saying the same thing
mhm.
as the background, which I thought was really cool in the direction.
Yeah, I think this is flash forward because he just got out of the hospital and rejoined the unit. Um, you know, he just came back after getting shot in the butt.
Hmm.
And remember, he got shot. It blew through both cheeks.
Yes.
Uh, so he
Yeah,
just got back, and he was one of the few commanders and lieutenants that was there. And so, I
that
would
was
think,
by Eindhoven where he got shot.
yeah,
Yeah.
Eindhoven, yes. Yeah, he got shot. So, it's one of those things where I think it doesn't say anything about this in the book, but what it says, what I think they're doing here is they're setting up his eventual breakdown
Hmm.
coming up in episode 7. But yeah, it's showing the seeds of the stress and the PTSD. So I think a key thing with this episode, you saw Winters and his PTSD, and you're seeing, how the other men dealt with it with drinking, and now you're seeing Buck Compton, his a little bit of his starting to go, and so it's a real psychological thing that they're trying to set up. Like I said, this movie sets up a couple of things that are paying off in later episodes, which I think is one of the brilliant things about this episode. I'd be remiss if I didn't tell about Malarkey's bad luck and good luck. So Malarkey had back pay, and he used it and joined a craps game. So he lost all of his money in craps at first. So he goes and he borrows $60 from one of his buddies. I can't remember who it was that he borrowed the $60. He goes back to the craps game, wins a ton of money. Like he wins US dollars, like $4,000 or $5,000. He wins all kinds of other currencies. He keeps gambling with the other currencies, but saves like about almost $5,000, which back then was a ton of money. So he goes back, he pays the guy back $60 plus like an additional 500 as a thank you. And so he ends up with like keeping like $3,600 on his own, which is just phenomenal back then. And so what he ended up doing with it, because they're going to go to Bastogne right after this, is he ends up giving it to one of the financial people in the army who sets it aside for him. He won't be able to get it till he's out of the army. But essentially, it says in the book that paid for the rest of his education at the University of Oregon.
Oh, wow. I was gonna say, because he was gonna go to Paris, right, and party and have fun and
Yeah,
blow it, and, I was like, "Oh, he didn't get to, like, blow his money," like, hopefully, he was able to stash it somewhere and
yeah,
not lose it, right? Because they go to Bastogne and then, who knows? So thank God it was okay and that turned out good. That's great.
yeah. Nemesis of Eden says Buck eventual breakdown is so hard to watch. The actor who plays
Yeah.
him does an incredible job acting with his face and eyes. Oh yeah, couldn't agree more. Absolutely, absolutely. So, essentially, what happens here, and we're getting to Bastogne. So, the Germans push through the American Allied lines, uh, and basically, what it says in the book is that it wasn't as strategic as it could have been. They were lucky that the weather was such that American bombers couldn't get to them when they pushed through with armor, which is something they hadn't done, and they had the guys on the run, and so Eisenhower had to mobilize these guys in a hurry in jeeps, and they couldn't jump into Bastogne because the air cover and the weather prevented it. So they had to mobilize jeeps and trucks. And they said it's one of the fastest mobilizations of men on land in U.S. military history.
Oh,
So
wow.
they mobilized them and get them towards Bastogne. And so here you've got some replacements coming in with Bastogne. Now, these guys didn't have all the right equipment for winter weather travel, and they still had just the ammo that they had from Holland, which wasn't enough uh, for Bastogne. And so they're getting up there, and we see them stop, and they're seeing their guys that came out of that they're relieving in retreat. And so they're
Yeah,
asking
who
them
did they
for
say
bullets,
was
grenades.
retreating? Was it the 4th Infantry that was
I can't
retreating? I
remember. Hang
can't
on, I've got
remember
it right here.
who they said was retreating there.
Let me
They're
see.
coming off the line.
Yeah, let me see here.
But yeah, this part, I mean, this is rough too, right? I mean, they just, I don't know, is it because they had to scramble them into that area so quickly that they didn't? Because I know the
Yeah.
one guy was doing supply runs, right? And he's getting ammo and
Yes.
gear and bringing it in. The guy who is played by Jimmy Fallon actually was making a bunch of supply runs. But I was just wondering, like, was that just because they scrambled them all of a sudden so quickly that they didn't get, the right gear? But when they're going up to the guys coming off the line and they're like, give me your ammo, like, trying to scrounge what they can, like, I would have been, oh, give me your coat too. You're not gonna use it. You're coming off the line. I need I need a winter coat here. That looked just like this whole scene looks miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm looking at the book here, and basically for the German, it was kind of like the equivalent of almost Pearl Harbor is what they describe in the book. Just a real fast attack by the Germans. Um, the losses were staggering. 600,000 American soldiers involved, almost 20,000 were killed, another 20,000 captured, and 40,000 wounded. Two infantry divisions were annihilated, and one of them, the 106th. 7,500 men surrendered, the largest mass surrender in the war against Germany. Nearly 800 American Sherman tanks and other armored vehicles were destroyed.
Wow.
So in the German attack. So
Attack.
yeah, so Easy was coming up, and they were gonna do that, and you see Winters briefing Dyke, which I think I'm not sure if that had a chance to happen, but it's just interesting. And then let's see, 2104 Dogface says only the 82nd and 101st were available to be rushed to the battle as they both were recovering from Holland. Which, yeah, I mean that's what they had to do. They had to get somebody in there really quick. And the thing about Bastogne, we'll talk about it more in the next thing. This is the last slide here. Is Jimmy Fallon playing that guy? Bastogne was just a key staging area because it had, I think, 7 roads going to different areas, and so
Mhm.
it's very strategic, and that's why they had to come in and hold it. Let's see. The 501st and 101st took the brunt of the fighting to delay the Germans, while the rest of the 101st moved into position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you see
this
the
was,
stages here.
you do see Dyke coming up, and I think that's kinda just to show it gives you an idea whether if that scene was, like, invented for the show,
Mhm.
it gives you an idea of Dyke, like, what he's like as a leader compared to Winters because he comes up and he's, like, blaming the colonel for not being there yet. He's like, "Oh my god, what do we know? We're going into battle, the colonel's not here yet," and
Mhm.
Winters kinda gives him like, "Hey, have you gotten ammo? Like, what are you doing? Have you told everyone to get prepared?" Like, Winters is kinda giving him some grief there that he's the one who should be doing this, and then, of course, we see Dyke turn around right away and tell Compton and another lieutenant who's standing there like, "Okay, you go do that." Like, instead of, taking it himself, and you just see Winters give him this look like, "Oh god," like, that's not the way to do it. But yeah,
Mhm.
it really shows you what Dyke what is like there. Yeah,
Yeah,
and yeah,
absolutely. And
Dyke just mitigates it right off the bat, right, to subordinates.
yes, he's more of an administrator than he is a leader, and that's the difference
Yeah.
between him and Winters. Um, Nemesis Eden says Winters tells him to go do his stuff, and Dyke just mitigated it to a subordinate. Yeah, it looks like
Yep,
Winters with the
yeah,
look that wants
instantly.
appraisal.
And then you get the great line, right when Jimmy Fallon says, to Winters, "The Germans have cut the road, that they're gonna be surrounded," and, Winters says, "We're paratroopers. We're supposed to be surrounded." Thought that was a great ending for that episode.
Absolutely. And 2104 Dogface adds some more flavor to it, saying that Dyke was trained as a staffed officer, not an infantry company officer, which, yeah, very much. So they look at things a lot differently. Yes, I agree
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, you could tell that was not a good position for him to be in, and yeah, it wasn't good for Easy.
No, no. And, I mean, especially with where they were going. But, we're getting into the heavier episodes coming up. Another thing about this episode and filming it. So Jimmy Fallon and the Jeep. So they had to kind of push it and put it into gear for him, and then he just kind of hit the brakes on it because he didn't know how to drive stick.
Oh, really? That's funny.
Yeah, I heard about that. It was like he didn't know how to drive stick, so they
He
had to
didn't
do
know
that for him. It's just
how to
like, are you kidding me? What on earth?
that's funny. Didn't know how to drive the Jeep.
Yeah, I didn't know how to
Yeah.
drive the Jeep,
Oh,
so
that's
it's
funny.
kind of crazy. But I think it sets up a lot of things. This episode, what makes it great is you got a good story told in flashback, but it sets up characters as we described. It sets up scenes, and it sets up what's going to happen later on. Any other thoughts on this episode that you got or that you like?
Yeah, but I just same thing. I thought it was a great episode for character development, and
Hmm.
they really used this battle the Crossroads battle, the first battle, to kind of do that, to show you
Mhm.
all the different characters and the development, to know them a little better, show the kind of contrasting styles, and get show the effect that it's starting to have, the toll that it's starting to take, the different ways they're relieving stress, and it's interwoven into the action so well. Just a
Mhm.
really, really well done, really well directed episode. Really liked it.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and then 2104 Dogface. The other thing was that they didn't set the fires to warm up before moving out. Yeah, they couldn't really have fires because that would show the Germans where they were.
I wonder if that was to, for the visual effect, right?
I
Just
think
for the
so.
cinematography, right? It's lighting up the scene because it's dark and it's at night. You don't really have any other light, and it looks good when you have all these fires, in the holes. Which, yeah, I can't imagine just pouring with the fuel in there and lighting it on fire. It doesn't seem like they would be using the fuel up for that.
Yeah, Nemesis of Eden says the episode was my introduction to Band of Brothers. I found it really interesting. It did enough to make me watch the rest of the series. I'm glad it did. Uh, and then Nemesis of Eden owns both VHS and DVDs. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, wow, good.
Yeah, and 2104 Dogface also says they couldn't waste the fuel either. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah, that's what seems really right. You wouldn't pour a bunch of fuel into holes in the ground, but I just think that was done for the cinematic effect.
yeah, and I don't think you'd light a whole matchbook of matches and throw it on there. I mean,
Right.
it's like
Yeah.
what?
That's right, you need those matches for cigarettes later.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was a big thing on there.
Right.
The other thing that it said in here that they really didn't have places to sit on some of those trucks, so they had to get them on, and they were
Mhm.
packed in like sardines.
Yeah,
Uh,
which you could see that in there when they're
yeah,
riding the truck, and yeah, I like the one, the new guy shows his inexperience by admitting that he has cigarettes, and then everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah, give it here, give it here."
yeah, and then the socks,
Oh, yeah,
four pairs of socks.
yeah, that was funny. No, this
So,
had some really great stuff in it, and it's a good transition episode because you see there's gonna be kind of a difference in how the fighting's going after this point. You
mhm.
start out in Holland, and after they had jumped into there, and now this moving to Bastogne is kinda transferring to a different phase of the war.
Yeah. 2104 Dogface says, "Yep, they still do that today, packing you in a truck."
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the other things that they said about this that they joked about was, and they joked about it in the show too, was yeah, this is our tailgate jump.
Oh, yeah,
The
nice.
tailgate jump. So you jump off the tailgate of the truck. So
But they
uh,
don't jump again, do they? Wasn't,
mhm.
the
Well, they
outside
jumped one other
Hydra?
time to celebrate the end of victory in Europe, but that was a celebration jump, but they don't show it in the series. So,
Yeah,
but we'll talk about that when we get to episode 10.
right.
But yeah,
Oh, good.
this is the that we're getting the nitty gritty. We're getting to probably the two most well known and best episodes I think of the whole series coming up, and the with episode 6 and 7. So,
Yeah.
um, but anyway, let's see. Let's see. The term is still used as a tailgate jump. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's awesome. All right, well, we've reached the end of the episode. Uh, Anything you want to plug or talk about coming up? I know you're not a YouTuber, but you're very much a wrench.
Yeah, as always, come out to Doomcock's Pop Culture Breakdown and Friday Night Frolics on Overlord DVD's channel. I'm a wrench there, and hang out in the chat. We have a blast.
Absolutely, I'm in that chat as well. Yeah, so this week, Pop Culture Breakdown on Overlord DVD's channel at 7:30 or 7 o'clock Central, not 7:30, 7 o'clock Central. And you know what the movie of the week is, Heather?
Is it the French Connection this week?
Nope, that's next week.
Yeah,
So it
okay.
is Iron Eagle. Iron Eagle. And one of
Oh,
our
okay.
very own panelists, his birthday is actually today. So if you guys know Nick of Echo Base Network,
Oh, okay.
his birthday is today. I won't say how old he is, but happy birthday to Nick.
Oh, yeah.
And
Iron Eagle's a fun movie. It's
Yeah,
pretty far-fetched, but it's fun. I like it. Like the F-16s, and it's a cool very 80s movie, great Queen soundtrack, so yeah, good stuff.
yeah. Oh yeah, yeah. It's cool. It's a cool movie. Yeah, I'm actually doing the screenshots for it tonight. So it's a lot of fun. So we've got that. The French Connection will be
Okay,
next
the
week.
following week, okay,
Um,
cool.
yeah, but let's see. Then next week on my channel, guess what we've got? We've
Oh,
got
we
our
get
top 40.
our 1980s, our personal top 40 for the 1980s.
Yep, our top 40 of the 1980s, our wrap up show, where each panelist, which includes Heather, myself, Agent Pepsi One, who's in the chat, and Stark of Iron, are going to share our own personal 1980s top 40s. So, what we'll
Be
do is
fun.
we'll go through each one of ours, almost like we do, we'll knock them down 10 at a time for each person. And each person will talk about their songs and what they love about those songs, and we'll chat about them. And folks, it may be a situation where all four of us have 40 different songs.
That'd be fun. 'Cause I'm
Oh,
sure
yeah.
even if they're not in my top 40, I'm sure there's songs that I like and
Yeah.
that I wanted to have on my list, but just, ran out of space, so
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think we all ran out of space on ours. Agent Pepsi One had showed 10 that she from 50 to 40. So I may throw a screenshot of that, and I may give some of the ones that I left off too. So Heather, whenever you send me yours, if you want to give me a few that you left off, that'd be great too.
yeah,
So
I will do.
2104 Dogface had something that he wanted to plug real quick. He said he's going to be hanging out with the History YouTuber channel Project Past Filming at the 250th Concord in Lexington in a few weeks.
Oh,
That's
cool.
awesome.
That's really cool.
Oh,
So you guys
wow.
gonna be live there on, doing, like, a stream, or you just hanging out there and then, talking about it later?
Yeah, let us know more,
Yeah, let us know
2104
more about,
Dogface. Feel free to, yeah, leave some uh, information on the stream, and I'll feed it out to whoever's interested because that sounds fascinating. I mean, we're always interested in history, and we love to support other great YouTubers. I mean, this is a fun medium, and it's all about sharing and having a good time, and sharing what people know in
Yeah,
the chat.
heck yeah, we'll have to check that out, Project Past. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. So yeah, Nemesis Vegan, please join us. It'll be next week at 6:30 Central Time. Heather, that's 4:30 your time. Uh, with the time change.
I know.
Uh,
I'll remember it now. It's just like, for some reason, I thought the time changed on Sunday, and I was like, so I wasn't even thinking that it was gonna be
yeah, it's
whatever.
early sun. Oh,
Yeah, for
dark
those of
30s.
you who, for everyone who doesn't know, Arizona does not observe daylight savings time, so we do not change times here. So I had down 4:30 my time, and it was really 3:30 my time. And
Yeah.
Rob was like, "Are you coming?" So I apologize. I'm
Oh, no
like
worries.
scrambling to get here last minute.
Yeah,
I
no
know.
worries. No big deal. I
Once
mean,
it
I figured
changes
that's what
and I
happened.
adjust, I remember I'm 2 hours different from Central Time. So I'll get it
Yeah.
together now.
Well, you're not the only one. I mean, all of us that are going through it are like, oh, like getting up for church this morning was just not fun for me.
Oh, because 'cause you're
Yeah, I
shorter
was
on sleep,
yeah, I
right?
was like, oh,
Mhm.
I powered through, but
Yeah,
it's
not fun.
interesting. But
Fun.
folks, yeah, please join us next week. We're gonna do that, and then in a couple weeks we'll get to episode 6. And wow, we're halfway through now. So this is a great series. Folks, if you got any suggestions on other series that you like, Heather and I, and maybe some other panelists to maybe cover, let us know. We're always looking for other ideas and stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh,
so,
yeah,
oh,
definitely. Send some
hey,
recommendations.
yeah, 2104 Dogface said might take him to Moose's grave, so we might do something on that too. That would be cool
Oh,
to
nice.
actually see a video of Moose's grave and find out a
Yeah,
little bit more
neat.
about him.
Yeah,
So,
you'll have to let us know when you have that,
absolutely.
when you're doing that, putting that up.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. We'd love to see it. I mean, great stuff about history. But anyway, thank you so much for joining this. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share. Thank you so much to everybody who was in the chat. We certainly appreciate all the input that you guys give us. We're so thankful for it. And then for anybody watching later, thank you so much for watching. I'm so appreciative. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Share anything you have, below in the comments on what you like about this episode. Anything else that might be relevant that you enjoy. Let's see. What does Sigvalison say? Age of History 1 missed the part where you said earlier about Gloria. Okay. I don't know what that's
I
about.
don't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the song.
Oh, maybe.
But thank you, Sigvalison. Thanks for having us here.
Yeah, thank
You
you
have a
guys
nice
for
evening.
coming. It's always great to see you all here. So much fun getting all your comments.
Yes, thank you so
Yeah,
much. And
you
we
guys,
we
you
enjoy the
guys are
comment.
all also knowledgeable and
Hmm.
have great commentary. So it really
Yeah,
makes
and
it fun.
yes, it makes it fun and more interesting because we know a little bit about what we read and we watched, but some people have lived it and know a lot more about the military than we do. And we've got some people that have talked with the actual guys, which is so awesome. So
Right.
I'm just so thankful for your comments. I mean, appreciate it so much.
Yeah. I've learned so much more about this time and about Easy Company doing this stream. Even though I've watched this series a few times, doing this, like looking into it more and getting all the comments in the chat, it's been great. It's been, made it all new again and learned so much more about it. So, yeah, it's great. It's so great having you guys here.
Yeah, and most importantly, I hope if you're listening to it or watching it that it's fun, informative, and just if you love history and you love Band of Brothers, it's a great way to just remember the episode or find out what really happened versus what was shown on the screen.
Yeah.
But Herc 130 says, I always thought the exact facts over telling the story is acceptable because it opens up the dialogue and those within the truths will research more.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep,
Absolutely.
absolutely. All right. Well, hey, everybody, have a wonderful week. Thank you so much. We'll see you on the next one.
All
Take
right.
care,
Bye,
everybody.
guys.
Bye.